Bones. They were going to dig up bones. "I'm not sure this is a good idea," Parvanna said to Shozia the next morning. She had her blanket and her father's writing things with her. She hadn't been able to tell her mother about going bone digging, so she didn't have a reason to leave her usual work things behind. "I'm glad you brought the blanket. We can use it to haul away the bones." Shozia ignored Parvanna's objections. "Come on, we'd better hurry or we'll get left behind." Getting left behind did not sound so terrible to Parvanna, but with a quick look across the market to the painted-in window with her secret friend, she obediently fell in behind Shozia as they ran to catch up with the group. The sky was dark with clouds. They walked for almost an hour down streets Parvanna didn't recognize until they came to one of the areas of Kabul most heavily destroyed by rockets. There wasn't a single intact building in the whole area, just piles of bricks, dust, and rubble. Bombs had fallen on the cemetery, too. The explosions had shaken up the graves in the ground. Here and there, white bones of the long dead stuck up out of the rusty brown earth. Flocks of large black and gray crows cawed and pecked at the ground around the ruined graves of the newer section of the graveyard. The slight breeze carried a rotting stench to where Parvanna and Shozia were standing, on the edge of the cemetery's older section. They watched the boys fan out across the graveyard and start digging. Parvanna noticed a man setting up a large weigh scale next to the partially destroyed wall of the building. "Who's that?" "That's the bone broker. He buys the bones from us." "What does he do with them?" "He sells them to someone else." "Why would anyone want to buy bones?" "What do we care, as long as we get paid?" Shozia handed Parvanna one of the rough boards she'd brought along to use as a shovel. "Come on, let's get busy." They walked over to the nearest grave. What if there's still a body there?" Parvanna began. "I mean, what if it's not bones yet?" "We'll find one with the bone sticking out of it." They walked around for a moment, looking. It didn't take long. "Spread out the blanket," Shozia directed. "We'll pile the bones onto it, then make a bundle out of it." Parvanna spread the blanket, wishing she were back in the market, sitting under the window where her secret friend lived. The two girls looked at each other, each hoping the other would make the first move. "We're here to make money, right?" Shozia said. Parvanna nodded. "Then let's make money." She grabbed hold of the bone that was sticking out of the ground and pulled. It came out of the dirt as if it were a carrot being pulled up from a garden. Shozia tossed it on the blanket. Not willing to let Shozia get the better of her, Parvanna took up her board and started scraping away the soil. The bombs had done much of the work for them. Many bones were barely covered by dirt and were easy to get at. "Do you think they'd mind us doing this?" Parvanna asked. "Who?" "The people who are buried here. Do you think they'd mind us digging them up?" Shozia leaned on her board. "Depends on the type of people they were. If they were nasty, stingy people, they wouldn't like it. If they were kind and generous people, they wouldn't mind." "Would you mind?" Shozia looked at her, opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again and returned to her digging. Parvanna didn't ask her again. A few minutes later, Parvanna unearthed a skull. "Hey, look at this!" She used the board to loosen the ground around it, then dug the rest of it up with her fingers so she wouldn't break it. She held it up to Shozia as though it were a trophy. "It's grinning." "Of course it's grinning. He's glad to be out in the sunshine after being in the dark ground for so long. Aren't you glad, Mr. Skull?" She made the skull nod. "See, I told you." "Prop him up on the gravestone. He'll be our mascot." Parvanna placed him carefully on the broken headstone. "He'll be like our boss, watching us to make sure we do it right." They cleaned out the first grave and moved on to the next, taking Mr. Skull with them. He was joined in a little while by another skull. By the time their blanket was full of bones, there were 5 skulls perched in a row, grinning down at the girls. "I have to go to the bathroom," Parvanna said. "What am I going to do?" "I have to go too." Shozia looked around. "There's a doorway over there," she said, pointing toward a nearby ruined building. "You go first. I'll keep watch." "Over me?" "Over our bones." I should go right out here?" "No one is paying attention to you. It's either that or hold it." Parvanna nodded and put down her board shovel. She'd been holding it for a while already. Checking to make sure no one was looking, she headed over to the sheltered doorway. "Hey, Kasim!" Parvanna looked back at her friend. "Watch out for landmines," Shozia said. Then she grinned. Parvanna grinned back. Shozia was probably joking, but she kept her eyes open anyway. "Kabul has more landmines than flowers," her father used to say. Landmines are as common as rocks and can blow you up without warning. Remember your brother." Parvanna remembered the time someone from the United Nations had come to her class with a chart showing the different kinds of landmines. She tried to remember what they looked like. All she could remember was that some were disguised as toys, special mines to blow up children. Parvanna peered into the darkness of the doorway. Sometimes armies would plant mines in buildings as they left an area. Could someone have planted a landmine there? Would she blow up if she stepped inside? She knew she was faced with 3 choices. One choice was to not go to the bathroom until she got home. That was not possible. She really couldn't hold it much longer. Another choice was to go to the bathroom outside the doorway, where people might see her and figure out she was a girl. The third was to step into the darkness, go to the bathroom in private, and hope she didn't explode. She picked the third choice. Taking a deep breath and uttering a quick prayer, she stepped through the doorway. She did not explode. "No landmines?" Shozia asked when Parvanna returned. "I kicked them out of the way," Parvanna joked, but she was still shaking. When Shozia came back from her trip to the doorway, they made a bundle of the bones in the blanket, with the skulls thrown in, and carried it together over to the bone broker and his scales. He had to fill the bucket on the scale 3 times to accommodate all their bones. He added up the weight, named an amount, and counted up the money. Parvanna and Shozia didn't say anything until they were well away from the bone broker's stall. They were afraid he might have made a mistake and given them too much. "This is as much as I made in 3 days last week," Parvanna said. "I told you we'd make money," Shozia said as she handed half the cash to Parvanna. "Shall we quit for the day or keep digging?" "Keep digging, of course." Mother expected her for lunch, but she'd think of something to tell her. In the middle of the afternoon, there was a small break in the clouds. A stream of bright sunlight hit the graveyard. Parvanna gave Shozia a nudge, and they looked out over the mounds of dug-up graves, at the boys sweaty and smudged with dirt, at the piles of bones beside them, gleaming white in the sudden sunshine. "We have to remember this," Parvanna said. "When things get better and we grow up, we have to remember that there was a day when we were kids, when we stood in the graveyard and dug up bones to sell so that our families could eat." "Will anyone believe us?" "No, but we will know what happened. When we're rich old ladies, we'll drink tea together and talk about this day." The girls leaned on their board shovels, watching the other children work. Then the sun went back in, and they got back to work themselves. They filled their blanket again before stopping for the day. "If we turn over all this money to our families, they'll find things to spend it on and we'll never get our trays," Shozia said. "I think we should keep something back, not turn it all over to them." "Are you going to tell your family what you were doing today?" "No," Shozia said. "Neither will I," Parvanna said. "I'm just going to turn over my regular amount, maybe a little bit more. I'll tell them someday, but not just now." They parted, arranging to meet again early the next morning for another day of bone digging. Before going home, Parvanna went to the water tap. Her clothes were dirty. She washed them off as best she could while they were still on her. She took the money out of her pocket and divided it in 2. Some she put back in her pocket to give to her mother. The rest she hid in the bottom of her shoulder bag next to her father's writing paper. Finally, she stuck her whole head under the tap, hoping the cold water would wash the images of what she had done all day out of her head. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mr. Skull and his companions lined up on the gravestones, grinning at her.